Everyone, welcome to the City of Evanston Planning and Development Committee meeting for Monday, October 10th, 2011. We have a quorum present, and the first item on the agenda is approval of regular meeting minutes from September 26, 2011. Is there a motion?
Move approval.
All those in favor of approving the September 26, 2011 meeting minutes, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Those meeting minutes are approved. For tonight's committee meeting, we have no items for consideration, but we do have one item for discussion. Before we commence discussion, we have a few people who've signed up to speak. I'd like to go ahead and hear our speakers first for public comment. We have, as I mentioned, three people, Eric Passit, Brian Batcharach, and hopefully I'm not mispronouncing this too badly. It's hard to read, but Nefredi Halim. If you could all approach one of the microphones and speak in that order, and keep your comments, obviously, as concise as possible and to the point. And state your name and your address as well. Thank you. So, Mr. Passit?
Sure. Right here's good?
Perfect.
Okay. My name is Eric Passit. I live at 830 Forest Avenue in Evanston, and I own an apartment rental agency in Evanston. So I'm not an owner per se, but I do represent a lot of, not say a lot of, but some of the large owners in Evanston that this law would gravely affect if this goes into, if you start enforcing no more than 3 unrelated people, in any building. I guess I just wanted to speak out because I help a lot of students, a lot of people find apartments in Evanston, and I know the owners we work with work very hard to maintain very safe, buildings that are maintained very well. And let's go into the student buildings. If this law is actually brought into effect, I guess the part that I wish people would understand is this is going to really hurt Evanston as a whole. Now, not everybody goes to Northwestern is, let's say, very affluent. Not everybody is. A lot of people are, but not everybody is. A lot of people come on scholarships. I'm not probably telling you anything you guys don't know. But when you can team up with 3 or 4 or 5 different students in an apartment that would actually, let's say reasonably, that's a legitimate 4 or 5 bedroom apartment, now you can take, let's say something that's $700 a month. If you rented just a studio, it would cost you about $700 a month. Now, if you can team up with 4 or 5 different people, I'm not talking 10, now you can cut your expenses quite a bit. If those students aren't able to afford an apartment in Evanston, where are they going to go? They're going to go to Rogers Park or somewhere else that might be more affordable. That's going to hurt Evanston as a whole, And not only that, if the owners can't, a lot of these apartments are $2,000, $2,500 a month in Evanston, okay? Now, if we can't rent to people who are groups of 5 people in those apartments, what's going to happen to those rents? They're going to go drastically down, $1,500, $1,700, $1,900 a month, depending on that. Well, that probably means the value, the worth or the value of these buildings are going to go down, which means tax revenue eventually could go down because we can't charge. There's no way we could get these rents. So I guess I would just urge, I know the owners, like I say, I know the owners we work with, work very hard to maintain the buildings in a very safe way. They don't tolerate parties. Not saying it doesn't happen. It's everywhere. This is a student town in a large part. It's a huge student population. I kind of like it, and I'm not a student. I like this, the town a lot for that reason. It brings a lot of liveliness to it. On a Saturday night, you have tons of students and young people out in the area. And it brings a lot of people. I just think this law, if we really put it into effect, could really hurt people, And so I guess I just wanted to say that and hopes that we could, like if you have 10 people in an apartment that clearly shouldn't have that, that's one thing. Okay. But we're talking about owners that most time, I know the buildings we represent don't do that.
And I don't remember, did you give your address when you stepped up?
Yes, I was 830 Forest Avenue.
Okay, thanks.
Can you tell us what company you're with?
I'm North Shore Apartments and Condos. It's an apartment rental agency here in Evanston. So that's all I have to say. Right. I appreciate the opportunity to talk.
Thank you. And Brian Batcharach?
Thank you, Alderman Wilson. I'm Brian Batcharach. I'm a lifetime resident of Evanston, and I've been owning and operating rental apartments in Evanston since 1988. I believe firmly that I am not one of the problem issues here, and I certainly recognize that there are some problems. But I just want to urge this committee to consider that my costs have skyrocketed, and then you keep adding new fees and new regulations when adequate regulations and taxes, well, maybe not taxes, exist, and that if they were enforced properly, this shouldn't be a big problem for the citizens of Evanston. My property is directly next door to me. There's 3 units. I take great pride in the fact that I over-maintain them and deliver instant service to my clients, who are my neighbors and some of them my friends. And I've just seen my costs skyrocket 22%. And whenever I recently, when asking for a 3% rental increase, they flip out. And it's just a matter of the world we live in and the economy that we find ourselves in. These additional fees are odious. I mean, I struggle to maintain a positive net cash flow on these properties. I'm already paying at least $500 more because I don't live on these properties for Cook County taxes, and I also pay a higher mortgage because I'm not occupying that property. Even though my property is contiguous to it, that doesn't make much difference here. The way I look at it, and I think it's fair to consider this, that I look at I don't have any children, and I've only had my tenants use the public schools less than a handful of times in the 20-some years I've been doing this. And last year, that one property paid, which, by the way, in 1996, the property taxes were $3,500 approximately. Last year, they were $12,000. That's a 333% increase in the cost of managing that proposition. I think it's just last year's elementary school portion was $8,100 and change, and why can't I'm happy to subsidize education. I think it's a wonderful thing. I think the schools are excellent. I went to Lincoln School, I went to Nichols and ETHS, and even attended Northwestern University. And I feel strongly that I'm happy to subsidize other people's children going to school. Can they help me out and subsidize the cost of inspecting and regulating my property? Because I've been generous, and I hope that they can step up too. Thank you for your time. I hope that you will have influenced you in a small way.
Thank you.
My address is 619 Oakton, and I've been there 11 years.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Don.
Yes.
Marini.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't.
And you can have what you like.
Alderman Rainey, sorry.
Alderman Wilson, could you clarify for us the item that is on our agenda?
I'm going to.
I know the first gentleman, I mean, you can talk about anything, but I think we should make it clear what the item for discussion is.
Sure. And what is up for discussion is a proposed ordinance regarding licensing, and pertinent to that are some licensing fees. The proposed draft of the ordinance contains a $26 per year licensing fee for these rental units. And it has nothing to do with number of residents per dwelling unit or anything like that. So I think there's probably some confusion as to what we're talking about and what we're entertaining. The proposed ordinance is online with the packet materials and the other materials, so if anyone is interested, it is readily available on the city website, and I think it would probably put a lot of people's fears and concerns to rest, because this has nothing to do with a lot of things that people appear to be worried about. So that said, we do have one more speaker signed up. Ms. Helene?
Hello, good evening. My name is Nafret Halim. I work for a couple of companies, Wilmette Real Estate, Evanston Rentals, and then I manage a number of properties for some other independent property owners, all in the area that would be affected by this ordinance. I actually have a couple of things that I would like to go over with you. The first of which is that if in the future, for example, this is a hypothetical situation, I have a building that has a problem and you want to revoke the license, I want to know by what notification I will be alerted to that. And I am extremely concerned about this since I got a call from somebody a couple of weeks ago, last week, end of last week, saying, did you look on the internet? Your name is on the internet. And it turns out that the city has released a statement saying that one of my properties, or actually a number of the properties that I manage, is being mismanaged. And the tone of the letter implied that I was putting people in harm's way. I had no notification of this letter. I had no notification that this would be going out. I had been actively trying to work with inspectors, getting violation information, and I was very upset when I saw this. I'm not the only person. So if that is a simple matter of keeping, my public face, I guess I can swallow that. But if it comes to me or anyone I work with being fined up to $2,500 a day for being non-compliant, I would hope that the city would make a much bigger effort in terms of getting involved and getting in touch with people. Number two, I just want to echo what the gentleman in front of me, before me, stated about the increase of cost. I do also want to say that in addition to residential rental unit, I work very actively trying to get people in commercial spaces, and we're having a severely hard time in Evanston right now. We are barely making some of our tenants continue their business, and that's with a lot of active involvement from our rental company personally. I don't know many other landlords who would be involved in the business of restauranting, nail doing, stuff that we have nothing to do with. So I think that imposing more fines on landlords and cutting into their ability to put their money elsewhere to grow their business and help their tenants is quite detrimental for the sake of all of downtown. And I do know that this meeting is about that this discussion is tailored toward the licensing issue, but as I'm sorry, I forgot this gentleman's name, said that I think there are a lot of people here who do have fears and concerns about the no more than 3 unrelated persons issue. And I hope, again, that the city would make a very vocal outreach to the landlords. We have not been involved to this point. We are upset about that. And additionally, the students are unaware of what's going on. I'm telling you this from firsthand. I get calls all the time from tenants, all the time, and I'm tired of it. Additionally, there's one thing that I'd like to say, this is from my personal point of view, is that this ordinance, which limits 3 unrelated people from living together, severely devalues many historic properties in Evanston. The housing stock that we have in Evanston was built at a certain time. These are irreplaceable buildings that were not tailored to this law. They are non-compliant. At the time when these buildings were built, they were constructed so that multiple people could live in them. There are a number of multi-unit buildings that are 3-unit, 2-unit, because at that time people couldn't afford to have their own unit. So those historic buildings will be very much in jeopardy if this law if this ordinance is applied, because they completely lose their value, and anyone who wants to make a return in their investment has nothing better to do than to knock them down and build a big new construction building that will be in complete compliance. So I do think that this very intensely affects the character of Evanston, the architectural history of Evanston, and I highly recommend that the city take further effort and research before they blindly impose this ordinance. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And I know that I'm not sure if my colleagues have been receiving the same things, but I've been receiving some correspondence and some communications from landlord members of the community as well as residents. So I intend to take those things into account and of course pass those along to the legal staff, who is presumably going to be working on the final draft of the ordinance. Is that correct, Mr. Cox? Right, thank you. Is there anything that the committee would like to direct the city attorney to draw their attention to in preparation of a final draft of the ordinance? Oh, I'm sorry. Is there anyone else who wanted to speak who didn't sign up? Would you please step up to the podium and give your name and address? Thank you, Alderman Holmes.
My name is Mike Tanner. I am a owner and reside at a property at 2237 Ridge. It has 3 units, one of which is occupied by me. And I echo the sentiment of some of our folks here who talk about the lack of communication of the city with the landlords. I bought a property that was questionably managed 4 years ago, sunk a lot of money into that property, went through the proper steps to get a permit, to bring the city inspectors on site to support that permit. It took almost a year from the time that my property was inspected to the time I got the notification that there were potential violations, which were minor. And then I found my property listed as well on the list of 52 with potential safety violations that just weren't there. So if this ordinance or law, the licensing law, would be pushed forward, I would have to echo the sentiment, I think, of the group here that we would have to have a very strong notification process in place and a more professional handling of these kind of issues.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Alderman Wilson.
Alderman Rainey.
Can we find out where this list has been published? Because you would think some aldermen would like to see the list.
I have it right here.
Okay, but
Okay.
where was it published publicly? Can you tell me?
Alderman Rainey.
List of properties under review by the City of Evanston, the Daily Northwestern.
Oh,
And I
the
have-
Daily Northwestern
Correct,
published.
but this is city information.
Okay. And Mr. Lyons, I think, can address the list.
Yes, members of the committee, I think my mic's on, yes. This list was originally discussed at the City NU committee meeting, and so the 3 aldermen that bracket the campus were in attendance at that meeting, along with members of Northwestern student staff, meaning Dean of Students and their staff. So it is also posted on the city's website. It's also posted on Northwestern's website. Yes.
Whereabouts?
Jeff, do we have it on? I know that we've sent it to Northwestern. That was on Thursday. We sent it to Northwestern, so their goal was to post it immediately. I have not checked the website. So they sent it out. We sent it to them right after our meeting.
What is the list?
The list provides addresses of units that have life safety or other code type violations up to and including a violation of the zoning ordinance where you would have more than 3 unrelated individuals living at the address. And the list came as a year-long process with the committee. A year ago, we set up a call number for students to check in to find out if they were looking at a given property, that they could call and find out if there was any history with that property. And we heard more and more a call for that students wanted to know and it's not relegated just to students. We have some properties off campus as well. I mean, most of these are off campus, but not surrounding campus. Wanted to know of properties that have had a history of either noncompliance or any kind of safety issues. And this was also a request of the university to know where students would be going in off-campus locations.
All right, let me ask you this. Is this a list that was generated from complaints by students?
The list was actually generated from a variety of sources, including complaints from tenants, observations from inspectors. Jeff, what other source?
Is it a citywide list? No. Yes, no.
Mr. Murphy, if you come up to the microphone.
Okay, let's pause a second. Where's the list on my website?
You know, it gets embarrassing sometimes for aldermen who've been around for a long time, especially those involved in housing. to have these little surprises pop up. I mean, we should really know about these things. And if you sent it to me, shame on me, I didn't see it.
Right. Does anybody know where we can find this list?
Yeah. I have my computer right
I have my
here.
computer right now. I'm just curious to actually
is
set my eyes on the list.
I believe it would be on the resident list. I can't
What
say-
resident list?
On the resident page,
On the resident page, I'm sorry.
Oh, on the city's homepage, okay.
and then what would it be, what title would it be under?
Honestly, we put it on we sent it to our web developer on Friday. I haven't looked at it myself, so I can't tell you exactly.
So it just went to the developer Friday,
I believe so, yes.
so it might not be here yet.
Okay, but how, Mr. Chairman, could we find out how the list was generated and,
Right.
okay,
Okay.
let's find that out.
Let us know. Tell us where the list came from and how it came to be.
Okay, the list is a combination of complaints from tenants, neighborhood groups, inspectors. That's pretty much the primary source. Through our routine inspections of buildings, we found we also get calls from graduating students who call when they're not getting their security deposits back, and they alert us. They tell us, I was living here with 5 people, 6 people, whatever the case may be. So our source of information is not just from individual inspectors' observations. They come from everywhere throughout the neighborhood.
Let me ask you a question. Do you feel like you have a clear policy or directive on what to put in the list?
Yes.
You okay? I'm not aware of the policy or directive. I'd like to suggest, unless anybody has an objection, that we take the list off the website for the time being until the council has an opportunity. Please keep it quiet. Until we have an opportunity to, in conjunction with the preparation of this ordinance, which I think is an important ordinance to proceed with, we need some clear direction to the staff to make sure that you know exactly what you're supposed to be doing, and then we know what you're going to be doing as well.
Okay.
Because I feel, personally, I don't have any understanding as to what the policy is, and the list is news to me. So is there any objection to that?
Well, I think I might have. I just want to understand what you're asking for, because are you asking for a policy in terms of publishing a list, or are you asking for a policy in terms of violations? Because there are clear violations on the properties other than 3 unrelated. Now, we were in the meeting, Alderman Fisk, Alderman Grover, and myself as the 3 representatives from the areas surrounding the Northwest, and this was a Northwestern city meeting. It wasn't a city-wide meeting, although there were addresses that were outside of the, what they want to call West Campus area, or which would be sort of where students are mainly, although students are all over the whole community. And the violations were multiple. There wasn't just one violation of a property. So I'm not sure what you're asking him for.
All I'm doing is I'm suggesting that this list not be published on the website until we have a clear, to me, it should be a citywide policy. It shouldn't just apply to any particular neighborhood or any group. It should be a citywide policy that applies to all of the landlords. And I don't think we should be publishing something until we have some direction to the staff on what should be published and how that information is going to be compiled. Alderman Rainey?
Well, I don't see it. Did you find it on the?
I can't find it.
I can't find it either, and I have NU student resources from the city website up, and it's definitely not there. But my concern is, first of all, if the press gets hold of something and publishes it, there's not much we can do. I mean, if it's public information, you can come in here or be on the city's news list and get all of the docket appearances, twice a week we get those. So that's not privy information. What I'm wondering is, are addresses listed, names listed? What is the list?
There are
Yeah.
there are names.
Yes, there are names.
There are names of
Addresses.
landlords and there are addresses of properties. Alderman Fisk, I think was it. Yeah. Oh, I thought you were like,
I do just, quickly want to say that I don't want this committee to be confused with the NU City Committee that talks about development issues in the campus area west of Sheridan Road. I don't know what the name of this committee is. The discussion at the committee, though, has grown out of, a year and a half to 2 years of talk about how best to give students a heads up about which buildings might have been cited for violations.
Life safety primarily.
Because they sign leases usually in October for the fall, in October of 2011 for occupancy in fall of 2012. So that was the purpose, I think, behind the discussion that's been going on for so long, is to make sure that students had advance notification about which buildings needed to cure their violations.
okay. Alderman Nguyen?
Well, I don't know.
Alderman Nguyen, I think, was
I'm
next.
sorry.
I would agree that we should, if we have a list, that we should make sure it's understood who's on, why a company or why a name of why an address is on the list. But I can say that over the years, I have asked the Property Standards Department on behalf of constituents of mine who have leased apartments from landlords who they've discovered then are not particularly good landlords, not necessarily anyone here, but a realty company that doesn't respond or doesn't maintain the building. There's someone who's new, and the numbers of times constituents have said, if I'd only known. And I have certainly talked to the Community Development Department in the past and said, is there any way in which we can factually state that, here are realty companies that have X number of have this number of units in our community and have this number of violations. So it's a resource. So if someone can say, oh, okay, X company does not seem to maintain its properties as well as Y company does, I won't rent an apartment from there. That has certainly happened to residents in my ward, and I feel helpless for them because they'll call me up and say, I'm in this building, and I'll think, oh, you poor thing. I know exactly what you're about to talk to me about. So, that's something that I think is something that I've talked to the Community Development Department about. I certainly think that it's valuable to Northwestern students as well, because obviously you don't want to sign on to something. It's for the very same reason. You're kind of blind in terms of what you're getting yourself into. And if the city has the information, factual information about the numbers of violations and the types, that should be public. It is public information. Why shouldn't we make it available to folks? But it should be fairly described and appropriately described in a way so that that anyone reading the list understands what's on the list.
Right, and there should be, I'm going to add a couple of cents opinion here too. If the violations are repaired or cured, are they off the list, and how frequently is that updated, things of that nature, they have to be included. Alderman Rainey?
Well, one of the problems with talking about all these things is probably if you gathered all of the laws we have together in one basket, you would find that we have things to deal with all of these issues. However, I believe in the landlord-tenant ordinance, there is a provision that says when an owner rents an apartment that they must reveal the current code violations. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, so you see, there you go. That takes care of that problem. We don't need to publish, but if we do publish, then it should be absolutely all-inclusive. And this list, I'm not going to accuse the city of, this is just a list of addresses, owners or managers, and number of units in the building. It says absolutely nothing. You could have the worst slum landlord on here next to somebody who has maybe 4 people in a 3-bedroom apartment, and they're all being treated the same. I've had my ups and downs with landlords over the years.
All right, please keep it down so we can get through the meeting.
But this is unfair, but it's not a city document. I mean, we can't control the press. We've all read things in the press that we know are not accurate. So let's get organized. Also, believe it or not, for the 3 of you involved with Northwestern, there are residents in the rest of the town who do rent properties and who do have landlords. It's not all students. And, you know, your regular man and woman on the street ought to be treated the same way as the young men and women up at Northwestern are treated. So if there's a bad landlord on the south end of town, I want him nailed just like you do. So.
Okay, and I think
Alderman
Alderman
Rainey,
Fisk.
I got to respond to that.
However, this, you know, the Daily Northwestern, excuse me, has never been known as the most accurate, most forthright journalism document that I've ever seen. I don't speak to them anymore because of things they've done. But so, you know, unfortunately, it gets out. It gets out, and people think it's real. I mean, people think what bloggers say is real, and it's not always real. So I think we have to yank whatever we're about to put on the internet off under the city's auspices and fix it. We got to fix it. We can't just be talking about up there. We got to talk about the whole city if we're going to do it, and we've got to say why they're on the list.
All right, let me just ask, as far as the committee goes, is there a consensus that we should withhold publishing the list on the city website?
But we can't control what's out there.
I understand that, but I mean, I don't want it published on the website also.
Not
right.
now.
Do we have consensus on that?
Yeah, but I want to speak first.
Okay,
Alderman,
but I think Alderman Fisk is next, and then Alderman Holmes.
You guys who are not on this list who need to be at the top.
All right, thank you.
That's why I want to respond to
Alderman Fisk.
Thanks. Alderman Rainey, you're absolutely right. I mean, one of the things that we tried to stress at the meeting is that the city is larger than the 2 blocks or 3 blocks west of Sheridan Road.
Doesn't look like it, though.
It's, well, we try to do that, and I think it's in the best interests of everyone, including students, to understand that this, because as you read what's in the Daily Northwestern, the impression is that this is targeted against students. This is a citywide issue, and we're up here dealing with a citywide issue. And unfortunately, when we have these meetings, which we attend because we're aldermen who border the Northwestern campus or part of the Northwestern campus, there's no one else at the table. And maybe we should be having these discussions in a wider venue. And I was going to say something else, and I can't remember what it was. I'm sure Dolores will think of it.
Think it over. Alderman Holmes.
I don't know if I'll think of it or not, but I do want to say that we've never thought about this particular law or ordinance in terms of just Northwestern students. I want to be real clear about that, because this is a citywide issue. And as an alderman that represents a ward that has problem landlords all over the ward, from Sherman Avenue to McCormick, and we've talked about that. Understand that this list came out of a committee that has been working on an issue that borders around the university. So that's where the focus was. Now, I can start rattling off bad landlord names, and you know, in terms of here, that are not on that list that would have violations. We've met them in other venues to talk about how they are going to correct. Alderman Brathwaite and I have met with something. We have a whole nother list. That can happen as well, but this was because we're trying to work with that particular committee, subcommittee, I don't know, we call it a City Northwestern Student Committee. What's the name of it, Marty? I can't think of it.
It originally was a City NU Housing Committee.
Right.
So that's to be different from the consent decree.
Absolutely. So please understand that. So, you know, and we certainly didn't give it to the Daily. I imagine the Northwestern staff that were there. I mean, they were there, and maybe they released it to the Daily.
I think Mr. Lyons
if I may, the city is the source of a list. I cannot say that it is the list in front of anyone or that anyone has in their hands in the audience. I can say that we were The list was requested by the Daily Northwestern, and we provided the list along with a short press release of our activities to the Daily Northwestern of the enforcement activities, which are not new. They are ongoing enforcement activities, and it was just our desire to continue the process of the group of Northwestern representatives and city aldermen and staff to try to get a handle on all of the properties that have issues, whether they're life safety, 3 unrelated, or non-life safety code violations. So it was a first list, and we will continue at the direction of the council on how you would like us to proceed with it.
Alderman Fisk.
I remember the last thing I wanted to say is that I don't think any of the properties on that list are solely overcrowding. I think there is some violation, code violation,
Right.
that's represented on each one of the properties.
There were multiple violations
Right.
on each of them.
All right. Please keep it down. Now, please keep it down. Thank you. The item on the agenda is the licensing question. These other issues have come to light, obviously. Some of the information not all the aldermen were aware of. I think we have consensus that the list will direct the staff to take the list off the web designer's list of to-do things, so that if it's not up, it won't go up, and if it is up, it will be taken down for the time being. And we'll be revisiting this. This isn't something I think that we can solve tonight, but certainly we expect to have the input from the landlords. We expect to have input from the community, and it's an ongoing process. As far as the licensing ordinance, that's a tool. It's a tool to assist us in having appropriate enforcement, in going after the quote-unquote bad landlords and not unduly punishing the good landlords. We want to do something that's fair and appropriate. There is the cost of the inspections. The city is expected by the students, the residents, and the people who live here to be diligent in enforcing the codes that exist. And in order to do that, you have to send human beings out to the properties to look at the properties to make sure that they're being appropriately cared for. And that costs money. So there has to be a way to pay for that, and presumably a portion of that would be from the fees that are charged for licensing and registration. So that is, of course, a component of the proposed ordinance. So I would like to direct the city attorneys to prepare a final draft of this ordinance, and I would like to return to this committee for further discussion on the issue of, I'm not even sure what to call it, but on this issue, let's call it for the list, for lack of a better term, on the policy of, or lack thereof, on reporting and compiling the information on a citywide basis for the landlords.
Okay. Mr. Chair, yes, we can also provide there's been several correspondence at that subcommittee level, and we will update the rest of the council with that information as well. Basically, the activity that's been going on for the last little over a year.
Thank you very much. Is there any further discussion on this item? Alderman Rainey.
When our staff sends out a press release on something of this scope, I really think all aldermen ought to be informed of it. It just keeps us in the dark about things that are going into the press, and I don't think that's a good idea.
I assumed we were going to get all press releases, so hopefully in the future we can.
But he just said that we issued a letter to the Daily, cover letter, press release. Didn't you say that? Yes, you did.
Yes, we did.
Yeah. You should get that.
Okay, if we didn't get it and I missed it somehow, if you can ensure that that all the aldermen receive all copies of all press releases. Because we all enjoy surprises so much, right?
Oh, I love them.
Mr. Lyons, any further discussion on the item?
No, Mr. Chair.
Any communications? Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Meeting is adjourned. We will resume with